Joining me now is the chair of the Democratic Caucus, Congressman Peter Aguilar of California. Congressman, thanks for being here. I want to get to the anniversary of January 6th in just a moment, but I first want to get your take on what's happening in Venezuela 4 days after the capture of President Nicolas Maduro. Do you feel that Congress is getting any more answers about the administration's goals in Venezuela?
No, I don't. I feel that there's still a lot of questions that are unanswered. I know the administration has some classified briefings to Congress tomorrow. We look forward to asking tough questions and hopefully getting some answers from the administration. They've already given some briefings to Congress. I think it's an all members briefing tomorrow, but clearly questions remain. We don't lose a lot of sleep for Nicolas Maduro not being in office. He was an illegitimate leader and a dictator, but what the administration has done here without detailing any plans for what life will be like for Venezuelans moving forward and what risks that poses to the American people and to American service members is deeply troubling to me, that we don't have answers to any of those questions.
And President Trump told my colleague Kristen Welker on Monday that elections won't be held until Venezuela is, quote, fixed. Does the president have a point there that it's maybe too early to hold elections and that this current regime is best placed to maintain stability? What are your concerns there?
Well, my concerns are that the president, said this was about narco trafficking, and now he's saying it's about oil. My concerns are that he's not building an international coalition that will have plans for what Venezuela can operate like in a post-Maduro world. That's the concern that we have. There isn't enough thought that has been put into place for this, and I think that we're seeing that lack of planning right now. And I think the American people are rightfully concerned whether young service members will be in harm's way and whether their tax dollars will go to Venezuela to help oil infrastructure or to help the oil companies themselves, just like the president sent $40 billion to Argentina. I think they're rightfully concerned about the resources involved here.
So I'm glad you brought up tax dollars, because that brings me to my next question. There isn't much Congress can do to stop this from happening immediately, but you are in the process, and I know you're an appropriator, negotiating the appropriations package for the Pentagon. Should the Pentagon's funding structure be a part of these conversations in terms of what the administration's next actions are in Venezuela? And should the Congress use that process to try and exert itself and be involved in this process a little bit more?
Yes, but that means that our Republican colleagues are going to have to stand up and say that we deserve an opportunity to be heard here, and that the president needs to come to Congress and ask for our support and give detailed plans. But right now, it's clear from our perspective that they're using some of the dollars, some of the DOD dollars in their reconciliation, one big ugly law bill in order to help DOD with their mission around the world, seemingly, which could include Cuba and Greenland and other countries. It's deeply troubling to us, but they have resources that House Republicans have authorized for them, but Congress needs to exert itself much, much more.
Would that include, it would take 60 votes in the Senate to pass an appropriations package for the Pentagon. Should the Senate take that into account when passing the full Pentagon appropriations package?
I hope so. Look, we need Democrats and Republicans both standing up for the prerogatives of Congress here. They have a duty to report to Congress, and our obligation is to expend these resources, and the administration should follow that authority. But they haven't done that yet. So, I don't. We're not holding out hope that the administration is going to wake up tomorrow and operate differently. But what we do need are our colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle to really step up and to tell the administration that they deserve, that we deserve broader say in what's going on here.
Let's turn now to health care. I know that's something that you and your caucus are very concerned about. The House could vote as soon as tomorrow on a extension of the Obamacare subsidies. This after several Republicans signed on to a discharge petition to force a vote. How confident are you that this extension is going to pass at least the House this week?
Well, we're hopeful, but it would mean that the Republican colleagues that we have who signed the discharge petition will vote for the measure. I haven't heard or seen anything that would tell me that they aren't going to, but it would mean that we need bipartisan support. And I know a number of them have indicated that they are willing to support these efforts to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. It would be important for the American people. These have obviously lapsed now in the new year. But it would be an important step to send something over to the Senate in a bipartisan way, hoping that we can pass law. We know that Donald Trump this morning told House Republicans that they need to be the party of health care. They know that their bill that they passed took health care away from millions of Americans, and that the expiring tax credits affected millions more. So clearly, this is something that Donald Trump understands is a weakness in his party and his administration, and I hope that we can have a bipartisan solution to it.
And if there isn't, are you willing to enter into another possible shutdown to get what you're looking for out of these negotiations?
Look, my answer is always that we want bipartisan solutions and we want to fund government. We didn't want the longest shutdown in American history. Donald Trump wanted that. Clearly, Republicans have paid a price for it. The American people know that health care is on the ballot this November. They know that Republicans stood by and actively helped eliminate millions of people from health care across this country. So those are just the facts. But I don't want another shutdown, and none of my colleagues do.
Okay, let's talk now about January 6th. This is the 5th anniversary of the attack on the Capitol. You, of course, were part of the select committee that investigated the attack. Today, Democrats held a special hearing to examine the threats to free and fair elections. At the same time, the president was addressing your Republican colleagues. He's still calling the 2020 election rigged. He said that the U.S. election system is, quote, crooked. What do you make of his comments and just where we are as a country 5 years later?
Well, on the website that he put out today, blaming Capitol Police officers for the violence on January 6th. I mean, it's shameful, but this is just part of a strategy that the president continues to advocate, to whitewash and to tell a different story on January 6th. He doesn't want the American people to know that for 3 hours he sat in his office watching this coverage, rewinding the coverage, because he summoned this mob to the Capitol. That's exactly what he wanted. He doesn't want the American people knowing that. And it's just deeply troubling that the first act, just like you said in your last segment, the first act of his administration was a pardon of 1,500 violent criminals, people who ended up going back across the country and reoffending, many of them. It's just deeply troubling.
Okay, Congressman Pete Aguilar, thank you so much for joining us, sir. We appreciate it.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.